back to Betty. I'm your host, Cynthia Thompson. Thank you for joining me this evening. And today our show is going to be a very serious show, one that has been in the news for some time now. And I really like having a roundtable discussion with my friends so that I can see what they think about what's going on with these serious issues today. But before we get started, let's go around and introduce ourselves, and let's put a little twist to our introductions. Will you share with my viewers how many kids you have in your home? Let's start with you.
Hi, I am Dr. Honeycutt. I have 4 children, but I have none in my home.
Oh, 4. How many boys?
I have 1 boy, and he's a baby, and I share parenting, and it just works, because of my lifestyle as a doctor, that I share parenting with their dad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Wanda. I have 2 daughters. And one's in college and one's still home.
Okay, and?
Well, I'm Kit Coble, and I don't have any children.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. Last time I checked.
I'm just joking.
Now you're going to make me go check. Call everybody in my Rolodex.
Oh, no. My name is Janella Walker. I have a 13-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter.
Uh-huh.
My name is Vivian Simmons, and I have 2 adult sons.
2 adult sons. Now, I don't know if you all know this, and I'm sure you do, but there has been so many police officers shooting our young black men. A lot of times it's justified, but then there's a lot of times it makes you like, what's really going on? Before we really start talking about this crime, and that's what it is, a crime, how do you prepare your children when they leave your home in the morning and face the world? What do you tell them?
Well, I always tell my children to do what's right, even when no one's watching. Mm-hmm. And usually if they go by that, that'll help them make the best decisions possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Since my kids, I wouldn't say they're real young, but they're young about their selection of friends. So I'm trying to teach them about, one, the way they carry themselves and to the company that they keep. And just always be respectful. So that's where we're at right now. I know with my son entering high school, there's going to be some other messages that we're going to be talking about. But right now, just choosing the right friends, carrying yourself accordingly, and being respectful.
And Vivian, you have adult sons. What did you do when they were growing up to prepare them to go out into the world?
It was a different time. And so things have always... there are things that are above water and things are below water, and I think with sons, regardless of the time, you have to teach them about respecting themselves and respecting other people, and carrying yourself a certain way. If you have respect for yourself, then you will carry yourself a certain way, and so. To me, it was more about people, treating people like people, being respectful, and even and when they didn't, even though they're adults, I can still give a look, and they know exactly. It's non-verbal communication, and it still works.
And Doc, you have a 3-year-old son.
He's 4. Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
So are you ready for when he goes to elementary school and that first day of school where he is out of your sight for the whole day?
No.
No?
I'm not ready. I know he is ready because he thinks he's ready for the world. But, it is important that we instill in them, things about associating yourself with, people you want to be like, because you don't want them to get mixed up with the wrong crowd. They have to, they watch us. Our children watch us. So it's important, too, for us to lead by example.
That's a good point. So, Kik, I know right now you don't have any children.
Yeah.
But if you had a little boy, what would you tell him? How would you prepare him for the world?
Well, I have a younger nephew. He's about 8 years old. And I keep in contact with my friends who have children. And a lot of times they ask me for advice to tell them, especially if they're young black males. And what I tell them that they need to realize that the world's not going to always be fair to them, and they're not going to perceive them in the way that they perceive themselves. It's all about that self-awareness. So I tell them that whenever they go places, and if they think people are treating them unfairly, don't keep yourself in that situation and try to prove a point. If you're in contact with a police officer, don't think that you know so much about how you should be treated that you act out, or that you make a spectacle of a situation where you can de-escalate it by just saying no sir, yes sir. I think the object, especially with kids that are teenagers, is to stay alive and not to try to go out into the world to show people that you're so tough and that you know it all, because as we know, a lot of our kids down to 12 are getting shot by police officers, and it's through no fault of their own, but it's about the perception that people have of them. And sometimes we have to let our kids know that you may be perceived as a threat, even though you might not think that you're threatening. So
how do we prepare our sons, and not only our sons but our daughters too, for that situation where the police think that you're a threat, but you're not really? How do you do that with your kids, Janella?
You know, it's interesting you say that. I try to use a lot of opportunities to share with my kids. If I see a child who has been perceived as threatening by what they've seen on TV, and I say to them, how could that child or how could that young man be perceived differently? A lot of things I tell them is make eye contact. If somebody's waving at you, wave back. The thing with the hoodie, when Trayvon Martin happened, I hate to say it, but it didn't really surprise me because I know how that is perceived. I tell my child, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it, I hate a hoodie. I hated it before Trayvon got shot. I hate to say it again, it didn't surprise me. So I try to dress them even differently. It's unfortunate, but like Kit said, you have to prepare your kids or put them in a place where they won't be perceived that way. So I'm using that as a part of my toolkit for them, but at the same time try to see teachable moments to say, what could we do differently? How can that young man, that young person be perceived differently? He's probably the nicest guy on the planet, but we know how the world is, and that's just the reality. Nothing against anybody. That's just, my father taught me that, even as a young girl. That's the way that it is. It's unfortunate. We're still teaching people to this day how to perceive us. We just have to try to go that route.
To me, the challenge there about the hoodie is the fact that everybody wears hoodies.
Yes, you're right.
And so how do you teach it? Well, okay, you can wear a hoodie, but then you're going to be different for not wearing the hoodie, but everybody else is. I don't know.
It's tough, and like I said, I hate to even have to teach my child that.
Well, and one of the things that I noticed with my sons when they were younger was the peer pressure. I mean, it's how they act when they're around us because they know how they've been raised. But then when they are not around us, and that peer pressure comes into play, it's a whole new ball game.
It changes.
Right.
So,
you're exactly right.
And it's almost as if we're, when do you turn it on and when do you turn it off? And I think that's one of the things that, and it's not only about our sons. I think it's about us as black people. We can fit in anywhere.
Yes.
We know the language. We can go anywhere and fit in anywhere, and nobody would ever notice it. And so, is it a charade? No, I don't think so.
No,
it's just that knowing when to use it, when to change faces, and so. And it's difficult to teach that to children.
It really is.
Do you think that maybe they don't get that message because in their minds everybody's equal and they haven't seen the real struggle? I was sheltered from it, so I didn't see a whole lot of it, but I'm sure when I was a young girl, some things were going on, because I can remember my grandparents not letting me go into the grocery store with them.
Wow.
When we would go there for the summer when I was a little kid, or go into a department store. I can remember them tracing my feet to buy me shoes because I had to stay in the car the whole time. Do you think that we should teach our kids that, or are they just missing the whole lesson that we struggle to get to where we are now? And how do we get them to that point to believe that this really happened?
I think we we make life look easy to them.
Yeah.
To me, my
Yeah.
children, they don't think that I have a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
They think that I always have money. They think like everything just goes.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, I just make life look easy
Yeah.
to you
You're
all.
right.
But I go through things too, So I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking maybe I need to take a different approach. So I'm glad that I'm up here because I'm learning some things myself.
That leads me to it. We do a lot, not a lot, but I try to, when I say about the teachable moments, we do a little bit of role playing.
Yeah.
Like one of my biggest concerns for my son is when he was going on a DC trip, trip, and we were talking about the potential for his buddies or even him being tempted by stealing something. So we had the conversation. We played it out. We said, this is what it could possibly look like if somebody else takes something, if you take something. Everybody's, so stay away from those situations. And if you see it happening, step back because they're going to throw you all in the same basket. So we talk about those potential situations. If you get caught, you know what's going to happen. And they're just those kinds of things.
Do you think, like, if he was with a group of kids, him being black and maybe some whites, Hispanics, do you think that they will look at him first if someone did steal something?
Absolutely.
And why do you think that?
Because of the color of his skin. And so, and they even realize, and some of his friends who are not black, they realize they get a free pass. They realize, it's interesting in young kids, they realize, or they're starting to realize among themselves how they're treated differently. And it's interesting to even watch that a little bit. It's unfortunate, but even as kids, they're starting to realize the difference.
Kit, with you being a black man, the only one on the panel, thank you so much for joining us. Do you think that the police are fearful of black boys or young black men?
Well, I think it's evident. I mean, we see it because they're averaging about 2 unarmed black men deaths per week now, and it's been ramping up. What I was hearing you say about the company that you keep, realizing their perception and teaching that to them at a young age. I have a nephew. He's 8 years old, and my mother. She told me a conversation she had with him because they spent a lot of time together, and they said, why did that little boy get shot? She's talking about Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old that was killed for playing with a toy gun. And he said, why did that boy get killed, Grandma? And she was like, well, because the police thought he had a gun. And he said, well, why would they think that a boy that little has a real gun? I would have known it was a fake gun. So she had to explain to him that because he is different, or he's a different color than the officers that came up, they're going to perceive him as a threat, or possibly perceive him as a threat. And he needs to understand when he's outside and he has these little fake army guns and things like that, that he needs to not be menacing with it. And it's a shame that we have to tell kids that we have to act differently than other people do, but it's just our reality. So with Tamir, he was shot, I think, 2 seconds after he made police contact. So I think that what a lot of people are studying now, because we see that Black Lives Matter is in the forefront, that kids as young as 12, the people who do these studies, I can't really quote who they are and what colleges they come from, they say that when it comes to the eyes of a white officer, they see a 12-year-old as a 17-year-old. Because of that heightened sense of that heightened threat that they feel, they're going to treat younger kids more harshly. It's because they don't see them as a child playing with a gun. They automatically assume that they're a threat to society. And in a Tamir Rice situation, somebody called the police to say that they saw a kid out there playing with a gun. So when they came up, they shot him automatically. But we also got to look and compare that to open carry folks.
Yes.
The people who are walking around with real M16s. They're mainly Caucasians. They walk around, they go into grocery stores, they're going into Chili's, they're going into all these different businesses, and nobody is calling the police on them. So what is that? So is it that the white man with the gun is exercising his Second Amendment rights, but the black man with the gun is a threat to society.
But then most of these killings, these men don't have guns.
Exactly, but they always put a weapon in our hands.
What do you mean by that?
Well, with the Trayvon Martin thing, like you mentioned, he was unarmed, and of course, to play into the narrative of white supremacy, you got to perceive him as a threat. So what do? They put the cement sidewalk there. That was his main defense to why he felt his life was threatened.
Okay.
And here in Charlotte, there's a local case where CMPD officers shot Janisha Fonville, and she called the police to her home for a domestic violence situation. And what happened was that the police said that she lunged at them with a knife because she was in the kitchen. Now, we don't have full disclosure in this situation, but if I call the police to my house, I'm not going to expect to be shot by them. And if you shoot me on accident, and of course we've seen this play out in several scenarios, she's in her kitchen, so what? There's a knife in there. Let's say that she had a knife. Because we saw that with Walter Scott in North Charleston. They said that the initial report, after he was shot, they tried to say that he went after the taser. But whenever the video came out 3 days later, we saw that was a total lie. So is that a common narrative that they're trained to say these things to cover themselves? So, I mean, that's something we need to think of.
It is.
You know, with all that, kid, let's take a short break so I can digest what all you said. And we'll be back shortly to talk some more about this. Okay? Hey, welcome back to Betty. I'm your host, Cynthia Thompson, and I just really needed to take a short break because I cannot believe that a little boy could be walking down the street and be shot by a policeman because he had a iced tea and some Skittles. Or a play gun. Believe it or not, it's happening in America today. You would think that we were living in the 50s and 60s. When did they have the Jim Crow laws?
Yeah, but
40s,
the early 20s, the early 1900s.
Yeah, but it was different then. And what was different then is we being black people didn't have as many freedoms as we have now. And so now we're in 2015, and are we? I guess for me the question is, are we regressing? To me, in so many ways, I feel that we are. I mean, and this kind of goes back to even about Black Lives Matter. It even goes back to the president. I mean, since Obama has been president, I mean, to me, the tone of the nation in general has just changed.
Well, they don't even respect him in office.
Yeah.
So why should we expect them, when I say them, white people, to respect us? And are they trying to kill us off slowly? Is that their plan?
Well, it seems like that's like a resonant effect of what's going on when people feel like they're losing power. You gotta equate it to the situation in South Africa with Nelson Mandela. When he got into office, if you watch the movie Invictus, it had I think Morgan Freeman was in it. Well, when he came in, there was like this uproar in the Dutch community because they thought that he was going to exact revenge for apartheid. And I always equate those two situations because in that movie, he had to make them feel that he wasn't going to exact revenge and that he was going to be forgiving, because if not, those people who held power would hold resources back from the people who were oppressed. So that's what we're seeing in America now, that I call it the Obama effect, because a lot of people who really revere the office of the president, they think that since the face of America is turning brown, that they're going to lose their privilege. And I mean, that's a scary place to be. To think
if you're a white man, yes.
Yeah, if you're a white man, and or if you're a white woman and you think that you've been practicing, discriminatory things because you own a business for your whole life, and then all of a sudden you have this black guy that's coming in and changing all changing some of the laws, changing some of the regulations for your business. They look at it as an attack on their privilege. So we got to make sure that we can hold our head high and kind of be indifferent to the changes we see in them. But it becomes a bigger and deeper issue when it comes to life and death. And when police officers are stopping your children and then they're making a sudden move and they're shooting them. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole different thing. I mean, we can create economies in our own community to make sure that we give each other jobs and stuff, but what happens when that person that holds that gun and holds you there says that, okay, I can shoot you and say that you had a knife in your hand or that you went for my gun? And we know that I know that nobody here knows anybody that wants to go for an officer's gun.
No.
When we come into contact with police, we want to get away. We don't think to shoot you, especially if you don't have a warrant or never had a arrest record. You know, but that's their excuse.
A lot of the stuff that's going on now reminds me of that movie Crash that came out a few years back, how all the pieces and the different people seemed to not be connected, but as you watched the movie and you saw how everything unfolded, it was like each life was connected to the next life, and what someone did, their action gave another reaction, and it was just to me, all this reminds me of that movie, and I feel all lives matter. I know the movement is Black Lives Matter, but to me, I feel all lives matter, because me personally, I think everyone's a shade of brown, and I've always taught my children that, and growing up, people thought I was a little strange because I wouldn't allow my children to say white or black when they were talking about their friends or people. So people were like, well, what are they supposed to say? Light skin, brown skin? I don't know. Just because I've never met a white person, the actual color white. I've never met a black person. You know, I had a grandmother that was technically white, but asked her what color she was. She said, I'm a rainbow. So I remembered that my whole life. So when I see these different stories about Black Lives Matter, I automatically say all lives matter, because it's not just a black people thing or a white people thing, because what's going on now is going to affect the entire world. Not just America, not just Baltimore, not just Ferguson. I think it's going to have a trickle effect of the entire world. And, you know, of course, everybody has their eyes on America, and we don't really know how this is going to affect our country in the next couple of years with trade, commerce, e-commerce, global economy. So I just think all lives matter, because if we don't put a lid on this or kind of control it and figure out a way to all work together, it's not going to be a good thing.
So where do you think you start with something like that? I mean, it's getting big, you know. So,
taking the words out of my mouth.
Yes.
Where do we start? What do we do?
Well, you know, it was interesting in this last situation. I don't know if you guys, everybody's been watching, about the mom and who had snatched her child from the Baltimore situation. And what's interesting to me is that's a lot of moms. You know, if they can see their child, if I saw my child, I guess my point is it begins at home. That's the bottom line. We just need to kick up our standards for our children. The challenge is, how do we do that with all the poverty and those kinds of things? And what's interesting to me in that, in the 60s, people were poor. They managed to go to college.
But it was shared.
Yeah.
It was a different world.
And that's what I'm saying. We moved away. As we got more money and knowledge, we lost our family unit. You know, again, we can all, the oldest ones at the table, we can realize if I got in trouble and the whole street knew about it.
Yeah, Miss Mabel's next door.
Don't touch my child. Don't do this to my child. I think that's really caused some huge issues. There's no accountability, or not as much accountability as there was before. At least on my street, if I was in trouble, you know, I couldn't run to nobody.
But we don't even have neighborhoods like that.
Yeah, and we don't even have, and that's what I'm saying. When we started making money, we moved away, we moved out, all that family unit in terms of the village.
Yeah, exactly.
When we lost our village, we lost a lot of that.
But that's a direct result of integration, though. The farce of integration.
Exactly.
A lot of people don't want to talk about that.
But it hurt us in a lot of ways.
We were more congregated whenever we had to rely on each other. But then when we were integrated into the system, which was put there to exploit our resources and bring us into their failing economy, we lost our sense of value. And then, of course, with the breakup of the black family in the 1970s, when it came to the project things and like Cabrini Green and all that, those people were put into these very poor spaces. So they were fighting for limited resources, and it became like a gang epidemic, or it became like you're going to click up whatever people that represented whatever color or whatever street you were on. But we don't realize that the project thing destroyed our families, because as a stipulation to get public assistance, you couldn't have a man in the home. So that took the man out of the home, and he was like, well, I'm just hurting my family, so I'm going to go out there and be on the streets and try to do what I can. And everybody knows when there's not a lot of jobs, crime goes up. And that brought us into the prison industrial complex, and that's what's feeding it to this day. So we got to, like you said, bring the family back to the focus and let people in our neighborhoods, like the adults and people that are like us, police our children.
But to me, even with that, because like in my neighborhood, I don't see kids. I know they're there. You don't see them. Kids are not outside. You know, and even as far as knowing neighbors, you might know one beside you on this side and one beside you on that side, but we don't know each other.
That garage
anymore.
door opener killed me. You gonna roll right on in.
I hardly ever
Shut
let
that
my
door,
kids
and
go.
that's it.
Exactly.
But you're right. A lot of this modern
Exactly.
technology, all this stuff is like sucking the life out of family and relationships.
I don't let my children go outside. My youngest one is always like, I don't have any friends in our neighborhood, and there's only like maybe 10 kids in our neighborhood, and you know they're there because you almost run over them every time because they want to stand at the bottom of the hill. But at least they're outside playing. But I didn't let my kids go outside because the environment changed, and you don't know who's driving around. It's like, and you have to look up the sex predators online to see if they live in your neighborhood or near where your children are going to be.
Yeah, it's so many things you have to be aware of, and you try to protect your children against all of these things. And so and what's happened is made their world smaller. And so and then it goes right back into how do you prepare them for the world?
Yes.
When their world is just right here.
Yeah, they're right inside their house.
Exactly. You can't learn those life lessons inside the house. You can learn some of them, but you have to have some survival skills.
I always kept my girls involved in something like contact sports, not contact sports, but sports with different groups of people, like dance, basketball, baseball, soccer, like youth groups at church. So they had the opportunity to mingle and meet other people. And like my youngest one, most of her closest friends are light skinned, like pretty much her whole life, like white people. So y'all know what I'm talking about. Because she went to a predominantly white school, so it's like her whole attitude towards people in general is just totally different. She's very laid back. She's very open and loving to anyone, different cultures, any of that. And my oldest one is the same way, but she went to predominantly black schools, and it's like I could see a difference like night and day of how they deal with people. But like you said, they can fit in anywhere. They can talk to anybody about different stuff. And you were asking earlier about how do we teach them about our past. My children love to watch documentaries. I don't make them. I'll come in there and they're watching documentaries from like beginning to end. I'm like, what are you watching? They're like, it's very interesting. And they watch like about culture and Greece and how the actual human development, and they just love it. They think it's fascinating, but they're learning from that, and they wanted to watch Roots. I didn't want them to watch Roots. They wanted to watch all of Roots. I'm like, but they learned, so I'm proud of them for taking the time out to learn, but that helps them. And then my oldest one, she was in ROTC, so she's learned to be respectful to adults and to other people that are in authority, so that helps her when she's dealing with any confrontation. She knows how to carry herself.
You know what, guys? We have run out of time. You all have to come back so we can finish this, because I did not get to all the questions that I wanted to ask. Okay?
Okay.
And I want to thank each and every one of you for watching my show, A Better You, here on Public Access 21, every Wednesday night at 6 p.m.